Well, I was asked to come to Dallas by Metropolitan Jonah to help bury Archbishop Dmitri, and we did that. Prepared his body in the usual way, and that is, we washed him, we dressed him, and then being clergy, the Archbishop, he was obviously vested, and then we carried him downstairs into the cathedral, where he lay in repose in his cathedral for 5 days. I don't remember what month it was, do you? But it was 113 degrees outside in Dallas, and he lay there for 5 days. We had dry ice, cranked the air conditioning down, of course, but air conditioning won't take care of these things. And you simply never would have known that what we were doing behind the scenes as far as keeping dry ice and keeping him refrigerated. And then we took him out to a burial plot that he had purchased years before in a large cemetery in Dallas, huge place. And 5 years later, after the chapel was finished in which they were going to inter his relics, they asked me to come back and participate with the group that was going to translate his relics. In other words, exhume his body in the cemetery and take him out of the existing casket, put it in a new one and with new vestments, and then translate his relics back to the cathedral for burial there, where they are today. And while we were in that process, an interesting aside, I mentioned there were 2 funeral directors who were working with us that day. And I asked one of them, I said, well, I guess this doesn't happen every day, removing people's bodies from the grave. And I said, oh no, we do it all the time, do it every day. And they said that we have such a mobile society that it is a trend that children will actually exhume their parents, cremate them, and take them with them when they move. Oh, terrifying that this is just routine. It's just terrifying. And so he was buried in a vault in this cemetery. And I tell you right now, anyone who's listening, don't ever use a vault. They're an abomination. A commercial cemetery can require whatever they want to require. There's only 2 reasons to use a vault, and both of them are money. One is it makes lawn maintenance easier and quicker, and the other is it's additional profit. We get to sell you a vault. There's absolutely no reason to use them at all. In fact, vaults were originally developed to contain embalming fluids, to keep the embalming fluids from getting into the shallow water table, not to contain bodily fluids, because our bodily fluids are 80-some% water. There's no reason to contain body fluids. So I was very upset by the fact that he had to be sealed in a vault. So I voiced these concerns, and Subdeacon Vladimir and I actually drilled some holes in the bottom of the casket to at least get the liquid out of the casket, which it did. They removed the casket, they removed the whole vault, brought it into a warehouse. Interestingly, we had to sign a release form, each one of us that was there, and to release the cemetery of any liability for any psychological damage that might occur to us from what we were about to see. So they opened the the vault and looked inside, and inside the vault there was puddles of water everywhere. Water was puddled on top of his casket, which was a handmade wooden casket made by one of the priests in the area. So the water, the bodily fluids, had leaked out, as they will. They had drained out, but they had no place to go. They were contained in a sealed vault. So he had been in 100% humidity for 5 years underground. Literally puddles this big on top of the casket. And we removed the casket. If you see the pictures that were taken of the casket in the vault, you'll notice, you might not, but I did, there's absolutely no mold inside that vault. Very strange. Mold spores are everywhere. And in a warm, moist environment, mold should have been rampant in there. There was no mold inside the vault. There was no mold inside the coffin. So we removed the coffin and opened it up, and he was completely intact, completely incorrupt. Gravity takes its toll. There was obviously some dehydration, even though he was in 100% humidity. The fluids had drained out of the skin. The skin was looser, and you could see the bones more. But when you see the photographs, you can see the veins in his feet. You can see the veins in his hand. And his vestments were completely soaked. Some of the items in the coffin had deteriorated. Cross had tarnished and that type of thing, which you would expect. But he was completely incorrupt. I was the last person to kiss his hand, literally as the top was coming down. And it's interesting. I kissed his left hand, and there was a tiny little abrasion somewhere on his left hand, very tiny, not quite the size of a BB. And you know how that is. You can see when it's an abrasion, you can see the capillaries, and you can see a little bit of red in the capillaries in there. And for some reason, I just noticed it when I kissed his hand. It stuck with me for 5 years. I went looking for it, and I found it, and it looked exactly like it did when I kissed his hand 5 years earlier. Could still see the red. Yeah. So we very carefully revested him. The only damage that was done to Archbishop Dmitri's remains was done by the vault. If his body had been allowed to, the fluids had been allowed to drain out as they normally would into the soil, then he would have been completely incorrupt. He lost a couple of fingernails, simply due to the fact that he soaked in 100% humidity for 5 years. But other than that, he was completely intact. So we vested him, put him in a new coffin, and transferred him to the cathedral, and where he was reinterred there with great ceremony. And he's there today.